Thank you for joining us for this recorded follow-up to our August 25th public information session on Phase 4 of the Kicking Horse Canyon project. We would like to acknowledge that the project is located on the traditional territories of the Ktunaxa Nation and the Secwepemc Nation, whose history here predates the arrival of European settlers by thousands of years. We have reconvened most of our panelists to respond to the questions that we weren't able to get to at the live session. The folks that we have here today are myself, Jack Stumple. I am the Communications and Engagement Lead for the Kicking Horse Canyon project. And I'll invite the rest of the panel here to introduce themselves also.
I'm Mike Lormer. I'm the Executive Project Director for the Kicking Horse Canyon project.
Hi, my name is Art McLean. I'm the Operations Manager for the Kicking Horse Canyon project located here in Golden.
Hello, my name is Caroline Keddy. I'm Director of Communications and Engagement with Kicking Horse Canyon Constructors.
Hi there, Kyle Roto, Foundations and Walls Technical Manager with Kicking Horse Canyon Constructors.
Hello, Robin Taylor, Senior Environmental Assessment Manager for the project on behalf of the province.
Hi there, I'm Greg Johnson, and I'm with BCIB. We're a Crown corporation that's set up to actually employ the skilled trades workforce on this project and on other projects around the province.
Hi, I'm John Chant. I'm Communications and Engagement Representative with Khcp.
Thanks to the panelists for joining us again, too, for this follow-up session. And, you know, it will be fairly brief. There were a number of questions that we did leave unanswered at the end of the live session, but there weren't that many. And I'm going to ask John, who was our Q&A moderator, to go through them and invite our panelists to respond accordingly.
Thanks, Jack. The first question we have is about hires. So Greg Johnson, you're up. Are most full-time hires direct to the contractor, with BCIB hiring more of the casual workforce?
That's a good question, and it's a question we get quite often. Because this model where you have the Crown Corporation as the actual employer for mega projects like Kicking Horse Canyon, Patello Bridge, the Broadway subway project, those other big projects, it's kind of a unique model. So the way it works is that we, British Columbia Infrastructure Benefits, we are the employer. We employ the skilled trades on these projects that fall under the Community Benefits Agreement. So we're a Crown corporation. We report into the BC Ministry of Finance. And so that makes us, through the province, accountable for employing and, more importantly, growing the skilled trades workforce and diversifying the skilled trades workforce. What that means is not just growing the number of people, but increasing the representation from people who are traditionally underrepresented in the trades. So helping combat the skilled trade shortage that is taking place across North America right now. It's lots of contractors are feeling it in British Columbia right now. And so what we do is our approach is to make sure that we're creating opportunities for people who are traditionally underrepresented on these major projects. And what we do is we encourage people who are Indigenous, women, members who may be members of the LGBTQS+ community, and even locals to apply for work on our website. Go to bcib.ca, and what we do is we help put together the workforce. Now, more directly to your question, it's a balanced approach. The contractor gets to name hire a number of people for the crew, and then we also get to put a number of people that we've recruited or we've talked to about working on the project on the crew. So it creates a balanced approach where the contractor has a number of workers that they're familiar with, but there's also people that might be new to this particular contractor or new to this particular job. They have experience in the trades, but this might be their first time working on such a big infrastructure project. So the idea is it makes it a balanced approach. So the contractor has familiarity and there's opportunities for new workers to help diversify the workforce. And if you are interested in getting on the job or in any of the other community benefits agreements projects being built across the province, go to our website. It's bcib.ca, and there's a big button there, apply now. Click that, and that's the first step, and we'll be in touch with you to make sure we've got everything we need for you. Thanks very much. Hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Our next question is for Robin Taylor on why the use of the term pronghorn when the closest pronghorn is approximately 250 kilometers away.
Because of the importance of this corridor to wildlife, the structures folks who were responsible for all the structures and viaducts in the preliminary design were needed to find a number of names that would be easy to remember and had significance for the project. So some of the names are, have definite significance for the project area, and other ones are a bit more whimsical.
Thanks, Robin.
Robin, which ones are the ones that would probably have more significance to the project area?
So bighorn is certainly very important, and sheep. So in fact, they're the same animal on this project, but both those names are very significant. Grizzly is also an animal that is found here rarely, but it is sometimes been recorded in the vicinity. So that those are definitely ones that are more significant. A more whimsical one would be something like hedgehog.
Now, these are informal names anyway, right? Basically, just for convenience during construction. And once the project is done, really, what's going to happen is these structures are all going to be assigned very, very boring structure numbers under the ministry's inventory process.
That's correct.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you. I hope that answers the question.
Great. We have a series of questions now that I'm going to direct to Kyle Rhoda. As mentioned, he's the Walls and Foundations Technical Manager for Khcp. Kyle, how big in diameter and length are the micropiles at Sheep?
The micropiles at Sheep are 250 mil diameter, a touch larger, actually 10 3/4 inches. It's an imperial measurement. By about 9 meters long. We've used slightly longer ones on bighorn nearby. I think they're 12 on one side and 60. Very in depth by where the rock is found in relation to the foundation of the structure.
Great. The next question I think is fairly similar. How long are the typical steel nails used to stabilize the slope, and are they filled with grout?
Yeah, so there's a couple different applications here. I think the temporary ones, the stuff that people have seen as they're driving through, the nails we're using, the hollow bar, is likely what the question's referring to, just because they're visible. They're about between 3 meters and 18 meters long, depending on the application. So some are used just for holding up a piece of mesh, the shorter stuff, and then some are used to actually kind of stitch the underlying soil, just give it a little more solidity underneath where we've got kind of cranes burying in the roadway and that kind of thing, up to 18 meters. Mil or 40 mil diameter bars, and then we've got some other stuff, and they are filled with grout. It's part of the question there. And then we've got some other kind of permanent anchor systems that will be employed as part of the bridge structures too. DCP, double corrosion protection anchors up to number 18 bar is the size of the design. Yeah.
Thanks. Next question. Are you able to find stable soils or rock to place concrete footings and columns in all the areas in the project?
Short answer is yes. Eventually we'll get there. So I as you can imagine, along the length of this job, there's different soils and different conditions throughout, and a past history where things on the mountain have moved through the canyon, right? So pretty extensive geotechnical investigation program to make sure we knew exactly that competent rock and the solid foundation structure below the roadway is. So we've kind of designed accordingly, so we'd be able to vary our design to be able to adjust where that rock was at and tailor it that way. So we do get there eventually, I guess is the question. Yeah, there's rock in there.
Yeah.
We're able to build on it.
Great. Next question. What is the max rock cut or maximum future rock face?
It's about just under 50 meters. I think it's 47. It'll I guess when we finalize, we'll get an exact measurement, but it's right around 47 is where we're at right now for the vertical-ish portion of the rock face. It's slightly less than vertical, tapered back slightly. Yeah, close to 50.
Is that the one at cut 3, Kyle, or what cut is that located in?
Cut 2, I believe, is slightly higher. There's one little peak right kind of 2/3 to the east that's a little bit higher than the others. Yeah.
So that's the cut that overlooks the Lynx Viaduct, right?
That's right. Yeah, between Link and the Frenchman's area. Yeah.
Got one about road grades. Are the maximum road grades going to be reduced from the current state? And if so, what will the maximum road grade be?
Yeah, so they are reduced. That's a big part of making it safer through this corridor, is changing the grades and straightening the curves, just to make it easier on traffic coming up and down. The east end of the job, where we tie into the existing traffic, is about 8% remaining coming off of the bridge just past the project there, to keep that grade. And then the new design through the corridor is 6% is the maximum road grade.
Are there going to be concrete barriers separating east and westbound lanes?
Yes, concrete median barrier throughout. Yeah. Yeah. So as we progress, there'll be some movement back and forth, but the final condition is there. Yeah.
I think I've got one more for you. What are the objectives for the fall closure? In other words, what will you be doing during the closure?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work tying in the structures and the civil work through where the existing roadway is, and building those structures in close proximity or even underneath or on top of the existing roadway that we just can't do with the roadway open. So those are the things we're shooting to plan in this closure to be able to do. There's some bridge girder erection on the east end of the job, sheep area, the rock cuts. So we've started kind of the blasting program right through, and that will continue through the closure. We've got a little more availability and time during the day, but all the rock cuts, blasting and clearing those areas, piling in some areas that are directly adjacent and in some locations in the highway. So trying to get all that stuff done, wrapped up and out of the way, and then traffic open back up again once the closure is done. And then some temporary shifts. So once some of this work is done, a bit of realignment of where the road is now and utilizing some of the additional space we will have, and paving those detours. So we'll be wrapped up and ready to go once the road opens up again.
Great, thank you, Kyle. I think that's all the questions we have for you today. I have another set of questions coming up though, and Art McLean, the operations manager for Khcp, has offered to lend a hand by answering these ones. And some of them relate to the alternate route and some relate directly to the project. Art, do you see any additional changes to manage the traffic on Highway 95 as a result of lessons learned during the first closure?
Great question, John. We spent a lot of time watching the operation of the alternate route during that spring extended closure. We found actually that it worked really quite well. A lot of the improvements that were undertaken, not directly related to our project, but certainly the Radium Roundabout, performed extremely well. There was some improvements at the intersection at Edgewater, which also worked quite well, and then a new inspection station in around Harrogate on Highway 95 that performed as well as what we had hoped. The improvements also within Golden, they took a little time to adjust for the locals, but they actually have worked really quite well. So we've been very, very pleased. We do have some additional line painting that will be undertaken in the fall here, coming up before the fall extended closure. That will be going forward as we had originally planned. Toward the end of the spring extended closure, we did some traffic counts, volumes, and also some speed surveys. And what we found was that the volumes were less than what we had projected, certainly more than normal, but they were less than they were projected to be. And for the most part, drivers were traveling at or very close to the posted speed limit. There were some exceptions, as there always are, but overall, our speeds on the quarter were pretty darn close to what we were looking at. We'll continue to work with our colleagues at Parks Canada for the operations within Kootenay National Park, and there will be some additional line painting put forward there at about the same time in early part of September.
Thanks, Art. Next up, how will emergency responders be supported getting out onto Highway 95 during the fall extended closure?
Just after the extended closure in May, I was able to meet with members of the Nicholson Fire Hall, and they shared some of the experiences that they had with some of their emergency response. So we looked into some options. We've been able to actually recently, we received an approval to install some enlarged, some upsized signage, advanced warning signage, that once they're arrived, the district's maintenance contractor will be installing those, and we'll be also able to move them back a little bit to give a little bit better advance warning. We'll keep a watch on that. Hopefully that'll help address some of the concerns that the fire hall had raised.
Thanks. We have a compliment here. Your Highway 95 alternate route worked well with high RCMP presence. Will the RCMP presence continue at the same level for the fall closure?
Fully agree. The presence of the RCMP and CVSE personnel was greatly appreciated and worked really, really well for us. They paid an awful lot of attention. We continue to work with both agents to look at proper coverage and enforcement along the route, and we'll continue that over the course of the fall, and we'll address it accordingly as we can.
Is there going to be increased winter road maintenance on the alternate route, reflecting anticipated increase in traffic?
Well, when we were planning the project and we looked at these extended closures coming into play, we made some arrangements with both the Rocky Mountain District and the Ministry, and also with Parks Canada to elevate the winter road maintenance specifications for Highway 95 and then 93 through Kootenay Park to be at the same level as what would normally be seen on the Trans-Canada Highway. That will continue in the fall, and will continue throughout any further extended closures that we have coming up during the project period.
Great. We have a question about the signs entering Golden from the TCH to the Highway 95 directional signs. That as opposed to, say, why are the signs entering Golden from the TCH to Highway 95 directional signs, as opposed to safety info signs? The person asking says there are great safety info signs from the south.
Well, when travelers or drivers come into to towns, into urban environments, there's a lot of information that they're presented with that they have to process. That can be everything from intersections to signage to business signage along the highway. In developing the alternate route sign program, what we wanted to do is to ensure that we provided clear and concise information to be able to direct those travelers that may not be familiar with getting through Golden onto Highway 95. We want to be able to provide that very clear direction, and also from the other way. Really, there were no changes made in the approach from the west into Golden. You're basically, as a traveler, you're coming into Golden, and it's not until you're kind of a good portion of the way through your normal travel is the diversion coming into play. So what we wanted to do is to provide that very clear and concise directional information without creating a bunch of sign clutter. And we know that sign clutter loses the effectiveness of the signs. Coming from the south, however, it's a little bit different. There isn't nearly as many signs as coming from the west. And this, for the most part, anybody that would have been on or going on to the alternate route, this would be something very unfamiliar. So not only was the directional signage important to be able to get them through town safely, but also the idea of providing them with that kind of advanced warning, advanced information that they are approaching a town and a residential environment. That's really where the difference lies.
Great, thanks. I think I've got one more for you, Art. Is there any opportunity to install webcams throughout the project? Some people think it would be really interesting and informative to have the opportunity to check in fairly often.
The great news here, John, is yes, and in fact, they have actually been installed. It took a little longer to get them operational than what we had hoped. Because of the locations that we have, they're going to be running on solar power. So that required a little bit more design and engineering in order to get them to be reliable through the contract period. So they are actually up and running and operational, and we hope to be able to get some images, or we anticipate getting some images posted to the project website in the very, very near future.
Very cool. I look forward to seeing that. Thanks,
They look really good. They're really good.
Yeah. I've got a few more questions to go through. Next up, we have Mike Lorimer, the Executive Project Director. Let's start with this one, Mike. What's happening with the Lower Canyon access for rafting?
Thanks, John. I think as a lot of folks from Golden will know, it's over the last couple of years, there's been some challenges with the access to the Lower Canyon for river rafters. Historically, that's been happening across CP's private property upstream of Golden. So I think where we've kind of landed is any improvements there really is beyond the scope and funding of the Kicking Horse Canyon project, but we were able to provide some technical advice to do some assessments of options and some paths to move forward. And at this point, we've now left that with a local working group and some representatives from the Ministry of Tourism and from the Ministry of Transportation, along with staff from CP Rail, to see if an agreement can be worked out across that private property that meets all the required safety standards. From a project perspective, the access route that does access that private land will remain. So should an agreement be reached, there will still be an access from the highway.
Great, thank you. Is the project on its original timeline? In other words, is it on track?
Absolutely. I think we've got a very complex project with a lot of structures, bridges, viaducts, walls. So while it's tough to measure sort of a percent progress because you're not looking at one or two single structures, there's a number of different critical paths that are important to meeting the completion date in 2023-24. So as it sits right now, I think the KHCC team is making great progress. I think we're still sitting on track to see things at the scheduled completion date.
Okay, thanks. What's happening with the archaeological documented digs, and have there been any interesting significant finds being excavated?
Absolutely. Working working closely with archaeologists and our partners from local Indigenous communities, we've done an extensive archaeological program at the site. It's critical with any public works these days to ensure that those archaeological values are addressed, understood, and mitigated. And that's the work we've been doing over the last 8 months and continue to do on site. The sort of findings of that are still being determined. The professional archaeologists that do the work have been doing sort of gathering all the field data and now beginning some of that lab interpretation to really understand more about the artifacts that have been found. So we're going to continue working on that in the coming months and making sure we do everything we can to ensure those values are protected.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
I've got one last question that ties into handing things back to Jack Stumple. Jack, how frequent will these kinds of updates be?
That's something that we're just looking at now, John. We're probably, given the response that we've had to this initial webinar, it'll probably be sometime before next year or before next summer. We might even look at something like this, say, as a Christmas present or as a sort of an early New Year's kind of introduction to look ahead at the coming activities for 2022. So we haven't set a date yet, but definitely, I think, as I say, based on the response, we do want to do these again and look forward to sharing updated information when that time comes. Look for information on the project website, through our newsletter, and through our Facebook feed too. So with that, we have responded to the questions that we weren't able to get to at our session on the 25th. Thanks everybody for joining us. Look forward to sharing information with you again, as we just talked about. And thank you very much for the ongoing patience and support as we continue with this important and very challenging project. And thanks again to our panel who has reconvened to respond to the outstanding questions.
Absolutely.
So long, everybody.